Have you ever been so exhausted that all you want is to rush home, collapse on your bed, turn off your phone, and just breathe? Like a single moment of peace could somehow save your entire day. But then you open the door, step into the house you know so well, and realize nothing is peaceful. The very people you love the most, the ones you call family, suddenly feel like the source of all your stress. I experienced that feeling one late afternoon when I was drained physically and mentally. And it hit me, family isn't always the safe haven we imagine. My husband, Mark, and I live in a modest suburban house with 2 energetic kids and a schedule so tight it leaves almost no time for ourselves. Work, school, meals, chores, it all revolves around a strict timeline. Mark comes from a traditional family. His mum stayed home full-time, and his dad was the sole breadwinner. I, on the other hand, was raised by a mother who drilled into me from an early age that I must be independent and never rely on a man. I carried that mindset into my marriage from the start. Mark and I agreed on one principle: everyone shares the responsibilities at home. No one carries it all alone. I handle mornings, getting the kids ready, breakfast, and heading to work. Mark takes care of dinner, and our house cleaner keeps the place tidy. Right now, our cleaner is on leave, so the work falls entirely on us. And then came the news that hit me like a punch. His parents were coming to stay with us for 2 weeks. 2 weeks might not seem like much, but for me, knowing what I know about them, it felt like a ticking time bomb. My mother, Ilhanhas, has always disliked my modern lifestyle. She visibly bristles when Mark shares household chores and particularly hates that I work instead of staying home with the kids. She doesn't say it directly, but her looks, her tone, and her subtle remarks are constant reminders. You're not doing it right. Mark is wonderful in so many ways: hard-working, devoted father, and a reliable husband. But he still carries the weight of his traditional upbringing. He wants his parents to be proud, which puts him in a tricky spot between his mother and me. I've realized time and again that even though Mark loves me, he sometimes leans toward pleasing his family, even when it clashes with the principles we've set as a couple. Knowing they were coming, I meticulously prepared. I cleaned the house, organized every corner, and cooked a few dishes I knew his mum liked, not to placate her, but to avoid a confrontation on day one. Mark also prepared dinner and checked his schedule to make sure everything would run smoothly. We discussed ground rules: respect each other, maintain boundaries, and don't let them impose traditional values on our household, but still be polite and tactful. I knew, however, that when traditional values collide with modern ones, conflict is inevitable. I remember those first conversations when we set these rules. I said to Mark, "You know, I don't find my purpose in life just by being the perfect wife or an all-consuming mum. I want us to be equals, to build our family together." He nodded and smiled. "I know. I want us to be a team, no one left behind." Now, facing the prospect of living with his parents for 2 weeks, the pressure felt real, immediate. Every word, every action could be scrutinized. Every meal, every chore, every moment with the kids could become a test. I kept asking myself, will Mark stand by me when I need to defend myself, or will he once again side with his parents? How will the kids perceive this tension? 2 weeks, it sounds short, but to me, it's a mental battlefield where equality, independence, and courage will be pushed to the limit. On the first day of their visit, I spent the entire morning cleaning, organizing, and preparing a light lunch. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that this is about showing respect, not compromising my values. Yet, deep down, I was already bracing for judgment, critical eyes, and subtle comparisons from my mother-in-law. When the door opened and Helen stepped in, I immediately felt her scrutinizing gaze. She didn't speak at first, just assessed every detail of the house and how I greeted her. Mark smiled, trying to diffuse the tension. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Everything's ready for you." I forced a smile too, but inside, my nerves were buzzing. Because I knew that even the smallest action of mine could be interpreted as not enough. I told myself, stay calm, stay strong. Don't let them dictate how our family lives. But at the same time, I felt drained. Exhausted from being a modern wife, a mother, a housekeeper, and now having to stand firm under the judgmental eyes of the people who raised my husband. And I knew that in this moment, my values, my principles, and my courage would be tested, and the way I reacted would set the tone for the next 2 weeks. 2 weeks full of subtle battles, emotional tension, and moments that could either fracture or strengthen our family bond. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual, my heart racing, because today wasn't just any day. My in-laws were arriving, and I knew from the second they stepped through the door, everything in our house would shift even with all my careful preparations. I cleaned every surface, organized every corner, checked the kitchen, even rearranged the living room to make sure there was nothing for them to criticize on day one. My kids, 2 energetic little humans who usually ran around like mini hurricanes, seemed to sense the tension. They watched me with curious eyes. "Mum, why are you so nervous?" they asked. I forced a smile. "Nothing, sweethearts. Mum just wants the house tidy." But in my head, 1,000 scenarios were playing out. What if my mother-in-law complains? What if Mark doesn't back me up? What if the kids get caught in the middle? Every little detail felt like a potential emotional landmine. When their car pulled up, my heart nearly skipped a beat. I heard Mark opening the door, calling out, "Mum, Dad, welcome." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but the second Helen walked in, everything tensed. Her eyes scanned the house, from the living room to the kitchen, finally settling on me. A small, knowing smirk hinted she was already judging. She didn't speak right away, just stood there, silently assessing. Bark tried to break the ice. Kids, ready to greet Grandma and Grandpa. "Everything's ready for you." I smiled too, but my stomach churned. Helen stepped into the kitchen, tapping lightly on the counter, as if to remind me that she was watching every move. And then came her first words, not direct, but dripping with subtle judgment. "Oh, it's a little messy, but I guess it's fine." I took a deep breath, trying not to let my voice shake. "Hi, Mom. Everything's cleaned and ready," I said, keeping my tone even. But inside, a storm of tension, frustration, and anger brewed. During lunch, the small clashes started. Helen commented on what the kids were eating, what they were wearing, and how the house could be more proper. Every comment came cloaked as concern. "Do you think this outfit works? Maybe the table could be tidier." On any other day, it might seem harmless, but after years of subtle judgment, these little remarks pierced me like needles. Mark looked uneasy, offering awkward smiles, but not defending me. Every time I tried to respond or explain, he gave me a look, half apologetic, half embarrassed. I realized he was stuck between loving me and being loyal to his parents. And in that moment, I felt the loneliest I'd ever felt in my own home. In the afternoon, after the kids napped, Helen began discussing how I ran the household. "Are you sure you should be working? A proper wife and mother would stay home with the kids and cook." I stayed quiet, trying to remain calm, but each word felt like a stone hitting my patience. Mark sat nearby, watching, offering a small smile but no pushback. I felt like I was fighting both my mother-in-law and the silence of my husband at the same time. When I moved to the kitchen to prepare dinner, Helen followed, making small, precise comments about how I arranged utensils, chopped vegetables, or placed pots on the stove. I bit back my frustration, but years of suppressed irritation bubbled to the surface. In my mind, my mother's voice rang out, "Never let anyone make you feel small." I knew I couldn't stay silent. Yet I also knew a strong reaction now could escalate the tension. Mark stood nearby, torn, wanting to defend me, but fearing his mother's disappointment. His silence made me both angry and hurt. I told myself, this is my chance to stand up for myself and for our family. I will not let her dictate how I live or how my children grow up, but I also had to consider the kids. They were watching, learning from how adults interact. Every action I took was a life lesson. I didn't want to model yelling or losing control. I took a deep breath and addressed Helen firmly, but calmly. "Mum, I understand you care, but I'd like us to respect how our family operates. This house has its own way of balancing work, kids, and chores." Helen raised an eyebrow, a mixture of surprise and disapproval in her gaze. Mark looked at me, half supportive, half anxious. I realized that today's little battle was just the beginning. The 2 weeks ahead promised ongoing, subtle emotional clashes, but at least I had stood up for our principles, staying calm, speaking clearly, and being firm would be key to surviving this challenge. That evening, after the kids were asleep, Mark and I sat down and debriefed. He admitted he was stressed and didn't want me to feel alone, but confronting his parents had never been easy. We sighed together, understanding that the next 2 weeks would be tough. But I also knew this was a chance to demonstrate unity, equality, and love that could endure the pressures of a traditional family mindset. I reminded myself, these 2 weeks wouldn't just test me, they would teach Mark and our children about love, respect, and defending family values in the midst of cultural clashes between tradition and modernity. That evening, after a long day filled with subtle critiques, judging glances, and barely concealed advice, I thought maybe things would calm down. The kids had finished eating, and I was preparing dinner for the family, a simple, comforting meal. I wanted to create a normal, peaceful atmosphere, even though inside I was still tense and exhausted. But the moment I stepped into the kitchen with the simmering soup, Helen appeared, hands on her hips, scrutinizing me from head to toe. "You've got the soup too close to the stove. That's not safe. And why haven't the vegetables been washed thoroughly? Cooking without paying attention to details is careless for the family." I swallowed my anger, took a deep breath, and tried to stay calm. "Thanks, Mom. I'll be more careful. I'm just trying to get dinner ready quickly so the kids aren't hungry," I said evenly, forcing myself to appear calm. But inside, a part of me wanted to scream. "This is my house. This is my dinner. Why do you keep interfering?" Mark stood nearby, watching both Helen and me, looking anxious and unsure. He opened his mouth, but what he said only made me feel even more deflated. "Mum might be right, sweetie. Paying a little more attention wouldn't hurt," My chest tightened. I turned to him, tears welling up. Why would you say that? You see her constantly criticizing me, and you agree. This is our home, our family. Don't you see how unreasonable this is? Mark lowered his head, silent. In that moment, I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. The person I trusted, the one I thought would always stand by me, had let his mother impose her views without defending me even once. Helen smirked, half mocking. See, my dear, tradition exists for a reason. A wife should know how to care for her family and children. Your husband is trying to indulge you, but don't think you can rise above every traditional value. Anger surged through me. I straightened up, looking Helen in the eye. Mom, I'm not denying tradition, but tradition can't ignore reality. My husband earns $35,000 a year to support a family of 5, and I also work to share the burden. We're trying to balance everything. No one here is idle or failing to do their part. Helen's face twisted with surprise, while Mark stepped back, eyes glossy. He sighed and said, I just want Mum to understand you're trying, but you also need to recognize tradition exists for a reason. My heart ached. I saw tears glimmer in his eyes. I knew my words had hurt him, but at this point, I couldn't hold back any longer. I turned away, carrying the soup and setting the table, reminding myself to control my actions. Even though my emotions were exploding, the kids sat quietly around the table, sensing the tension. I swallowed hard and forced my voice into a calm tone. It's okay, everything's fine. Let's eat. Helen didn't let it go. She checked the table setting, directed each seasoning move, and continuously emphasized that a daughter-in-law should learn proper cooking and care for the Day family. Every word felt like another stone added to the mountain of pressure on me. My body tensed, heart racing, but I inhaled deeply, telling myself, I won't lose my temper in front of the kids. I won't let her win. Mark tried to intervene this time. Mum, maybe we can just let it be. It's fine, really. She's doing her best. Helen turned to him with a cold stare. Mark, don't side with her too much. Tradition is tradition. Remember that. Mark lowered his head, voice quiet. I know, but you also have to understand that she's doing a lot. He trailed off, afraid to continue. I realized he was torn between filial duty and his love for me. His silence made me feel both angry and hurt. I felt like I was fighting alone against both the pressure from my mother-in-law and my husband's indecision. Dinner ended in tense silence. After the kids went to bed, Mark and I sat on the sofa, exhaling deeply. I took his hand, speaking gently but firmly. Mark, I need you to stand with me. You don't always have to choose between Mum and me. We're a team, we're family. If I don't have you beside me, I feel completely alone, even in our own home. Mark lowered his head, eyes full of sorrow. He knew I was right, but the pressure from his family was overwhelming. He sighed, closed his eyes, and admitted, I just want you to understand. I love you, but I'm afraid of disappointing Mum. I don't know how to balance it all. I looked at him, a mix of love and frustration swirling inside me. I knew this wasn't just a conflict about dinner. It was a test of our marriage. If we couldn't stand united, these emotional pressures could last the full 2 weeks. Maybe longer, I reminded myself. These 2 weeks will teach us about love, partnership, and defending family values. Today, I stood up. Tomorrow, we'll keep going. Day 2 began with a lingering tension and fatigue from the previous evening. I woke up early, not out of nerves like yesterday, but with a quiet, underlying anxiety. The kids woke up early too, their laughter and chatter trying to soften the tense atmosphere. Yet I knew this would be another long day full of challenges. Helen didn't rush into the kitchen immediately, but her gaze through the window made me feel watched. Every small action preparing breakfast, arranging the table felt like it was being silently inspected. I reminded myself, today, I have to stay calm, pay attention to the details, but not let her take control. Breakfast passed with subtle but pointed remarks. Helen kept asking questions that sounded caring on the surface. Are the kids eating enough? Aren't the vegetables a bit soft? Why not cook this for the kids? Normally harmless, these questions, combined with yesterday's pressure, felt like tiny needles piercing my confidence and composure. This time, Mark tried to be more of a mediator. When Helen made another subtle critique, he gently said, "Mom, I think she's doing a great job. Maybe we can just let her handle breakfast her way." I was pleasantly surprised, a warmth spreading inside. Finally, he was trying, in his own careful way, to stand by me. Helen raised an eyebrow, silent, a challenge in her gaze, testing my ability to remain firm. I realized that today would be a tug-of-war of subtle boundaries. No longer the direct confrontation of last night, but small, persistent tests. After breakfast, the kids went off to play in the living room while I cleaned the kitchen. Helen hovered nearby, silently watching me wash dishes, stack utensils, and tidy the counters. Her presence alone was enough to make me tense. I reminded myself to breathe deeply, stay calm, and not give her any reason to claim victory. In the afternoon, when Mark and the kids went out for a walk, I was left alone with Helen. The subtle questioning continued. Are you sure the table should be arranged that way? This corner of the house looks a bit messy. Could you try doing it the traditional way? I felt the simmering irritation rise, but I responded calmly, firmly. Mum, I understand you care, but every family has its own way of operating. Mark and I are balancing work, childcare, and household chores. I'll keep the house tidy, but I ask that you respect how we manage our family. Helen looked at me, a mix of surprise and disappointment in her eyes. For the first time, I felt I had tested her boundaries without triggering an outburst. It was a small victory, but an important one. When Mark returned home, noticing the tension in the air, he sat next to me and gently held my hand. I noticed how you handled Mom today. That was really impressive. You stayed calm and firm. I think she's starting to realize we have our own way. I smiled, a sense of warmth spreading through me. Finally, he wasn't just saying supportive words, he was standing by my side, even if subtly and cautiously. It was the first time in 2 days I felt that solidarity. Dinner that evening wasn't as tense as the night before, though subtle critiques still slipped in. Helen commented on the dishes, the table arrangement, occasionally giving me a scrutinizing glance. Yet I no longer felt overwhelmed. I realized that calmness, firmness, and a respectful demeanor could carve out a safe zone in the house without triggering conflict. Before the kids went to bed, Mark and I sat together in the living room, reflecting on the day. We discussed how Helen had tested our boundaries and how we had maintained our stance. Mark emphasized, tomorrow we'll try the same approach. Calm, firm, and respectful. I'll be right by your side. We'll set boundaries together. I felt relief and hope. I knew the next days would still be challenging, but day 2 had taught me this: staying composed, firm, and united as a couple is key to navigating subtle pressures from a traditional family mindset. Before going to bed, I looked at our children, thinking about how they were learning from our behavior. I reminded myself, standing firm and respecting each other not only protects my marriage with Mark, but also teaches our kids about love, boundaries, and family values in the balance between tradition and modernity. Day 3 started with an air that seemed calm on the surface, but deep down I knew this day would be pivotal. After 2 days of subtle testing and simmering pressure, it was clear that Helen was ready to escalate from indirect critiques to a direct confrontation. I felt a mixture of tension and determination. Today, I wasn't backing down. That evening, after I finished preparing dinner, Helen stepped into the kitchen, her sharp gaze sweeping across each dish and every plate of vegetables. Then, as expected, the critiques came. "You put too much salt in this dish, and the kids are eating too quickly." A proper mother would watch them closely while they eat, not let them rush like that. I stood tall, took a deep breath, and tried to maintain my calm. "Mum, I measured the salt carefully, and I am watching them. They're eating quickly because they're hungry, and I want them to develop a bit of independence." Helen's expression hardened, but a proper mother wouldn't let her kids eat this way. "You need to learn how to care for them correctly. You can't just do things however you like." At that moment, anger and frustration surged within me. The 2 days of boundary testing had built my confidence, but being criticized in front of the children about how I care for them felt like a direct challenge. I spoke firmly, but with a calm tone. "Mum, Mark, and I are raising our kids the way that works for our family. They are safe, healthy, and I am observing them every step of the way. I hope you can respect our choices as a couple." Helen narrowed her eyes, a mix of surprise and disapproval flickering across her face. I noticed tears starting to well up in Mark's eyes. He stood nearby, hesitating, part of him wanting to defend me, part of him still fearful of his mother's reaction. I felt the weight of the entire family's tension pressing down. Mother-in-law, husband, children. The kids sat quietly, sensing the intensity, watching us carefully. I reminded myself, I can't let them see their grandmother dominate me. I need to protect both myself and the way we raise our children. Finally, Mark spoke up, his voice more decisive than it had been before. "Mum, that's enough. She's doing a great job with the kids. I trust her, and you should too." Helen flinched, a flash of anger crossing her face. For the first time in these past few days, Mark clearly took my side. He stepped closer, took my hand, and looked his mother in the eyes. "Mum, this is our family. We set the rules and routines. I won't let you undermine her in front of the kids." A warm surge of relief and pride washed over me. Mark wasn't just speaking words, he was standing firmly beside me. It was the first time he had asserted boundaries clearly in front of his mother without hesitation or fear. Helen drew in a deep breath, her tone challenging. "Mark, remember, tradition exists for a reason. A wife must know her place." Mark's response was calm but unyielding. "Mum, I respect tradition, but this is our home. She is my wife, and she is raising our kids the way we agreed. That's final." I looked at Mark, a mix of pride, relief, and love swelling inside me. This moment marked a turning point. Mark was no longer ambivalent or overly concerned about his mother's judgment. He was establishing a clear line of support, and I felt safe and validated. The children watched the exchange quietly. I could sense that they were absorbing the dynamics, learning important lessons about respect, boundaries, and the balance between love and authority within a family. This confrontation wasn't just about control or tradition, it was teaching them about fairness, partnership, and standing up for oneself while maintaining respect. Dinner continued, still under Helen's critical eye, but the tension was noticeably less oppressive. Her subtle comments about seasoning or table arrangement no longer carried the same weight. They were simply observations, rather than judgments that could shake me. I had carved out a safe space within the home for my family. After the kids went to bed, Mark and I sat together in the living room, hands intertwined, both of us exhaling deeply. I spoke first. Today was a big step. Mark, I know we still have 2 more weeks ahead, but today you stood by me. That meant more than I can say. Mark smiled, eyes glistening slightly. I know, and I'll keep protecting you and our family. We'll face whatever comes next together. A sense of hope and reassurance filled me. The road ahead would still be challenging, but day 3 had reinforced a vital truth. Love, unity, and firm boundaries can overcome even the most persistent pressures from traditional family expectations. Before heading to bed, I looked at our children, reflecting on the lessons they were learning from us. I reminded myself, every decision we made today didn't just protect our marriage, also taught our kids about respect, love, and the importance of standing firm while navigating the delicate balance between tradition and modern family life. Thursday morning started with a strange, heavy energy. After 3 days of testing boundaries and a direct confrontation, I knew Helen wasn't going to back down. She kept her usual habit of observing, making subtle critiques, but today I could feel the pressure building, ready to explode. Every glance, every gesture felt loaded. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm and stand my ground. Breakfast passed in tense silence. Helen kept commenting on how the kids hadn't eaten enough, the toast wasn't toasted right, and Mark's coffee lacked its traditional flavor. I gave a forced laugh, sneaking a look at Mark. He shrugged, trying to stay composed, but I could see the strain in his eyes. Every word Helen spoke felt like a wave hitting me, but I had to hold steady. I told myself, today would be the day. Not just for me, but for our family, our way of raising the kids, and our freedom as a couple by afternoon. I was preparing lunch when Helen suddenly appeared, radiating authority as she stepped into the kitchen. You need to teach the kids manners with me. They can't behave like this. I flinched, but kept my voice calm. Mum, I've been teaching them respect, but they also need freedom to grow and express themselves. Fear doesn't teach them anything. They need guidance and love, not intimidation. Helen frowned, stepping closer, her tone sharp. You're ruining them. A proper mother teaches children obedience and proper behavior. Tradition isn't something to ignore. I felt the tension inside me threaten to burst. I drew a slow, steady breath, stood tall, and met her gaze directly. Mum, we are raising our kids in a way that works for our family. They are safe, healthy, and happy. I hope you can respect how we do things. We honor tradition, but every family finds its own balance between tradition and modern life. This is ours. Helen's mouth dropped slightly, as if she'd never heard me speak so directly. I could see the shock, anger, and frustration on her face, but I didn't flinch. My heart raced, yet a new strength surged from within, the power of standing firm, supported by Mark and our kids. Right then, Mark stepped in, his voice steady but firm. "Mum, enough. I've told you before. This is our family. We set the rules. She's doing an amazing job, and I won't let you undermine her." The pressure in the room broke. I felt a rush of relief, pride, and happiness. Mark had truly taken my side. He moved closer, resting a hand on my shoulder, but his eyes remained fixed on his mother, serious and unwavering. Helen flushed, her voice rising with frustration and disbelief. "Mark, you need to remember, tradition is tradition. A wife should know her place." Mark didn't back down. He stepped forward, took my hand, and looked Helen straight in the eye. "Mum, I respect tradition, but we are a modern family. She's my wife, and we decide how to raise our kids and manage our home. That's final." I exhaled, a wave of freedom washing over me. The kids watched, but instead of fear, I saw recognition in their eyes, understanding that Mum and Dad were united. I smiled, hugging them close, warmth spreading through the room. Their little faces reflected trust, safety, and pride. At that moment, I realized our stance wasn't just protecting our marriage, was teaching the kids about courage, consistency, and love. After dinner, we all sat together. Helen remained silent for a moment, then stormed off to her room in frustration. The tension eased, but I knew the real strength came from Mark and me standing together, firm and unwavering. No yelling or arguments could match the impact of unity and love. Mark sat beside me, holding my hand tightly, gentle yet resolute. "You did great. I know today was stressful, but we stood our ground. We'll get through anything together." I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. I remembered the early days of our marriage, feeling intimidated by his family's control. Now, we knew how to stand firm, set boundaries, and protect our values. Thursday taught me that love, determination, and mutual support were the keys to surviving pressure from family and tradition. Before bed, I looked at our kids, taking in their sleepy faces, and thought every action today wasn't just defending our marriage, was teaching them resilience, respect, and the value of family love, even when tradition and modern life collide. I held them close, filled with hope that they would grow up knowing that love and respect go hand in hand. Friday morning felt lighter, almost like the house itself was breathing a sigh of relief. The tension that had hung over us all week like a heavy cloud was finally lifting. I woke up to warm sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, birds chirping outside, a sharp contrast to the heaviness of the past few days. For the first time in a long time, I felt real peace, not the fragile kind, but the steady, grounded kind that comes from facing challenges together and coming out stronger. The kids barreled into the kitchen, their laughter filling the space. Emma was fussing with her backpack, Max running circles around the table, knocking over a few small items but grinning the whole time. Helen was nowhere in sight, likely still in her room, mulling over yesterday's confrontation. Mark poured coffee for me, his familiar, gentle smile comforting as always. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the counter, that small, knowing smile that always calms me. "I am," I replied, and for the first time, I really meant it. "Feels like we've weathered the storm." Mark nodded. "We have, and the kids. They see us. They see us standing together. That matters more than anything else, and he was right. Watching the kids, I realized how much children absorb the dynamics between their parents. Every glance, every gesture, they pick up on it all. I noticed Emma stacking her blocks with intense focus, Max quietly helping her, mimicking her concentration. I looked at Mark and saw him smile softly, his hand brushing mine, warmth spreading through me. These ordinary little moments reminded me why we had to be firm, why we couldn't back down from pressure. Helen finally came down for breakfast, her posture stiff, her face still showing traces of frustration. I could see the inner struggle, pride and confusion fighting inside her. She didn't speak, just picked at her food. I decided not to comment. Words weren't needed. We needed space to reset, to restore calm. Instead, we focused on small, meaningful routines. Mark read the morning news to the kids, turning it into a fun Q&A game that had all of us laughing. I helped Emma tie her shoes, laughing at her exaggerated attempts, while Max insisted on helping set the lunch table, ending with a pile of napkins on the floor and giggles all around. These simple, ordinary moments were the foundation for love, confidence, and resilience in our children. By afternoon, Mark and I prepared lunch together, quietly joking and teasing each other in familiar, playful ways. We watched the kids play in the living room, listening to their laughter and little debates, and I felt a sense of lightness. It struck me, the real strength of a family doesn't come from authority or control, it comes from love, presence, and unity. Later, Helen approached me, her demeanor softer this time. She didn't scold or lecture. Instead, she asked hesitantly, "Do the kids enjoy their routines?" I smiled, keeping my tone gentle but clear. They do. They're learning responsibility, creativity, and kindness. And yes, they know respect. That hasn't changed. Helen didn't respond, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. She left the room, and for the first time in days, I felt like we had reclaimed our home not through confrontation, but through patience, clarity, and togetherness. That evening, Mark and I tucked the kids into bed, sharing a quiet moment in the hallway. I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his hand in mine. Max drifted off to sleep, while Emma whispered about her day, what she helped a friend with in class, how she organized her toys. I smiled, realizing that the values we were building in our family were already taking root in our children. Tomorrow, Mark whispered, we start fresh. We set the tone for our home. Together, I nodded, heart full of gratitude. The storm wasn't entirely gone. Helen's presence would always bring challenges, but we had discovered something stronger, the power of partnership, respect, and love. Our marriage had been tested and had come out stronger. As I closed the bedroom door, I took a deep breath, looking at the kids. Every moment of patience, every clear boundary, every small gesture of love was teaching them that real strength doesn't come from yelling or control, it comes from trust, consistency, and unity. I held them close, filled with hope that they would grow up in a family that balances love, discipline, and freedom, where respect and affection are always at the center. Friday ended quietly, but its significance lingered. We had weathered the storm, found our rhythm, and discovered that love true, lasting love's about standing together, even when tradition and the world around you challenge you. Saturday morning started more peacefully than any day that week. Sunlight streamed gently through the living room windows, casting a warm glow over the house. The kids' laughter echoed throughout, mingling with the scent of baking bread from the kitchen. For the first time in days, I felt true command. It was in the little things that made home feel like home. Helen stayed in her room while we prepared breakfast. This time, she didn't look tense or irritated, just quiet, occasionally listening to the kids' chatter. Mark and I exchanged a glance, no words needed. We had learned to keep the family rhythm steady, calm, and patient, while remaining firm when needed. We started the day with creative activities. Emma was drawing, Max building a city from wooden blocks. I let Helen watch without pressuring her to join, simply smiling and saying, "Mum, they love creating on their own. They're still learning responsibility and respect, but they also need freedom to explore." Helen looked at the kids, a hint of surprise softening her expression. I noticed her lips twitch in the smallest smile, tentative, cautious, but real. No words were exchanged, yet I felt a subtle shift, a first step toward acceptance. At lunch, Helen surprised me by helping chop vegetables. She was stiff at first, but when Max ran over to show off his sandwich, she smiled and nodded approvingly. "Good job, Max. A small moment, but a meaningful one." I squeezed Mark's hand and gave him a knowing look. Real change doesn't always come in big gestures. Sometimes it's a smile, a word of praise, or an accepting glance. Later, we went outside to play ball with the kids. Helen stood on the sidelines initially, observing quietly, then eventually joined in, gently tossing a ball to Max. I could see curiosity and even a bit of joy in her eyes. Emma ran to her and grabbed her hand. "Come play with me, Grandma." Helen laughed, genuinely engaged with the kids for the first time. I realized that acceptance comes slowly through small, joyful moments. Mark put a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "This is how we build harmony, one small step at a time." That evening, we sat down for dinner together. Helen was quiet, but instead of anger or criticism, she simply watched the kids talk about their day at school. The atmosphere felt warm, calm, and relaxed. After the meal, Helen approached me quietly. "Thank you for being patient. I know I've been difficult, but I want the kids to be happy." I smiled, warmth spreading through me. Just a few words, yet full of acknowledgement, first sign of real progress toward harmony. Mark held my hand, his voice gentle yet firm. "See, we're not forcing anyone to change. We're giving them space to see how our family works. We stand together, and the kids see that too." I nodded, watching the children play in the living room. I realized the greatest lessons in a family aren't about control or authority. They're about patience, empathy, and consistent love. Today's small steps by Helen showed that change is possible when people are given time, respect, and genuine affection before heading to bed. I looked at the kids, feeling their steady breathing as they slept, and felt hope swelling in my chest. Every moment today, every act of patience, every firm but gentle boundary, every loving gesture was teaching them that real strength comes from trust, consistency, and unity. I held them close, confident they would grow up in a family that balances love, discipline, and freedom, where respect and affection guide every decision. Saturday ended quietly, but its significance lingered. Today's progress was proof. Even small changes can lay the foundation for a happy family, where tradition and modern life no longer clash, but coexist and complement each other. Sunday morning arrived quietly, almost peacefully. The sun spilled golden light across the living room, illuminating scattered toys and half-finished art projects. The kids were already awake, their laughter mingling with the smell of pancakes from the kitchen. For the first time all week, Helen was up early too, but this time, she wasn't tense or critical. She moved slowly, observing quietly, yet with a softness I hadn't seen in days. I poured a cup of coffee and glanced at Mark. He gave me a subtle smile, the kind that said, "We're finally making progress." I felt a wave of relief. "Good morning, Mom," I said gently. "Do you want to help us with breakfast?" Helen blinked, almost surprised by the invitation. "I can try," she replied softly. That single phrase felt like a victory, not just for me, but for our family. For the first time, Helen wasn't trying to control or criticize. She was willing to participate. We set the table together. Max grabbed a plate, almost toppling it, and Helen chuckled, guiding his hands with patience. Emma whispered a thank you, and Helen's face lit up in a small, genuine smile. I felt my chest tighten not from tension, but from pride and relief. These tiny moments mattered more than any confrontation. Later, we went for a walk around the neighborhood. Mark held my hand, our kids running ahead, laughing, chasing each other. Helen followed behind, occasionally calling out advice or observations, but this time they were gentle, more like guidance than orders. She suggested a safer way to cross the street, reminded Max to watch for bikes, and then fell silent, letting the kids make their own choices at one point. She leaned close to me and whispered, "I see how well you manage everything. You really know what's best for them." I smiled, my heart warming. "Thank you, Mum. That means a lot." Her acknowledgement, small as it was, marked a turning point. Helen's rigid stance was softening, replaced by tentative trust and respect. She wasn't changing overnight, but for the first time, she was willing to let go of control and allow us to parent her way. Back home, we spent the afternoon in the backyard. The kids ran through sprinklers, shrieking with delight, while Mark and I sat on a bench, watching Helen teach them a simple game. She laughed openly when Max accidentally tripped and even joined in their games, her laughter light and spontaneous. I noticed that the tension in her shoulders had melted away, replaced with a relaxed presence. During dinner, Helen actually asked Emma about her school project and Max about his drawing. She listened intently, nodding and occasionally offering encouragement. The atmosphere around the table was warm and calm, a stark contrast to the rigid, tense dinners from earlier in the week. For the first time, our family felt truly united, not just Mark and I, but Helen, too, slowly becoming part of the rhythm rather than disrupting it. After dinner, Mark and I tucked the kids into bed. We lingered in their doorway, watching them fall asleep. Max murmured about the fun he had in the sprinklers, and Emma whispered that she loved Grandma's new smile. I squeezed Mark's hand, feeling a surge of gratitude. "This is it," he whispered. "This is what we've been working for, small steps, but real progress. Helen is starting to see it, and the kids are learning from our unity. This is how change happens." I nodded. And it's more than just about parenting. It's about family, respect, and love. We've shown them how to navigate conflict with patience and understanding. As we closed the bedroom door, I took a deep breath and reflected on the week. Every confrontation, every moment of tension had led to this. Helen's first real change was proof that patience, consistency, and love could slowly transform even the most entrenched attitudes. Our marriage was stronger, our parenting more confident, and our family more connected. Before drifting to sleep, I thought about our children. They had witnessed the power of calm, respectful communication, of standing firm yet showing empathy. They had learned that love and authority don't have to conflict, that consistency and patience are stronger than anger and control. Sunday ended quietly, but with a sense of profound accomplishment. The storm had passed, and while challenges would undoubtedly return, we had found a rhythm, a balance between tradition and modernity, between guidance and freedom. Helen's small steps toward acceptance were just the beginning, but they held a promise that our family could thrive together in love and harmony. Monday morning arrived with a calm sense of routine. The sun shone gently through the windows, and the house smelled faintly of coffee and fresh toast. For the first time in weeks, there was no tension hanging in the air, no sense of impending confrontation. Helen had emerged from her room, not with criticism or judgment, but with a quiet presence that felt almost cooperative. I watched the kids bustle about, their laughter filling every corner of the house. Emma carefully packed her school bag, double-checking that she had everything, while Max raced circles around the kitchen, excited for the day ahead. Helen, standing near the counter, quietly helped Max tie his shoes, her movements gentle, her tone warm. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. This was the Helen I had hoped to reach, not controlling, not critical, but present, involved, and, most importantly, respectful. "Mum," I said softly, "thank you for helping this morning. It means a lot to the kids and to me." Helen looked up, a small, genuine smile breaking across her face. "You've done so much. I see it now. I just didn't realize how important it was to let you both lead." Her words, simple as they were, carried a weight of acknowledgement and acceptance. I squeezed Mark's hand, and he gave me a small, knowing smile. Together, we had weathered the storm, and now the calm was real. Breakfast passed in quiet joy. Helen offered suggestions to the kids gently, and when they made small mistakes, she guided them with encouragement instead of scolding. Max spilled his milk, and she laughed softly, helping him clean it up. Emma proudly showed off her drawings, and Helen nodded, genuinely impressed. The warmth in her presence made the house feel full and alive, without tension. Later, we all went for a family walk. The kids ran ahead, laughing, occasionally glancing back at us with excitement. Helen walked beside me, chatting quietly. She shared memories of her own childhood, moments when her parents had guided her firmly, and then smiled as she said, "I understand now. You two are doing an amazing job." I felt a deep sense of relief and pride. It wasn't just about her words, it was about her trust. Helen had begun to respect the family we were building, and in doing so, she had become part of it rather than a force opposing it. Back home, we spent the afternoon together in the backyard. Mark played catch with Max, Helen helped Emma with a small craft project, and I found myself watching all of them, heart full. The kids were learning from our unity how to navigate disagreements with respect, how to balance independence with guidance, and how love could coexist with structure. Dinner that evening felt like a celebration, even though it was just an ordinary Monday. Helen engaged with the kids, asking about their day, listening attentively, and offering advice only when asked. She even suggested a small family tradition. Friday nights would become family story nights, a chance to share experiences and laughter together. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Finally, our home had found a rhythm where everyone had a place, and everyone felt heard. After tucking the kids into bed, Mark and I lingered in the hallway, holding hands. "We did it," he whispered. not by forcing change, but by standing together, being patient, and showing love. Look at the kids, they see it, and so does Helen. I nodded, overwhelmed with gratitude. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. We've built something real, something lasting. As I closed the bedroom door, I took one last look at the peaceful house. Every challenge, every argument, every tense moment had led to this. A family united, a marriage strengthened, and children learning that love, respect, and patience were the truest forms of strength. Helen had changed not completely, perhaps, but in the ways that mattered most. She had begun to trust us, to step back, and to embrace the family we had built. Mark and I had proven that unity, empathy, and clear boundaries could withstand even the strongest pressure. And the kids, in turn, were learning lessons that would guide them for a lifetime. That family is built on love, understanding, and the courage to stand together. As night fell, the house settled into quiet contentment. I felt a profound peace, knowing that we had not only survived the storm, but had emerged stronger, closer, and more united than ever. In that moment, I realized something essential. Real family harmony isn't about perfection. It's about commitment, love, and the willingness to grow together every single day.